Welcome back to another edition of the Weekly Breakdown Show. It is your initial suspects, your prime trio of breakdown camaraderie. It is AJ Schullo, it is Marcel Dorff, it is Davidson Baker back on the program for you this week. Here to break down a light heavyweight headliner between Anthony Smith and Alexander Rakic. But first, first things first. How we doing, guys? Marcel?
Yeah, I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me again. And by the way, man, you look sharp with that new haircut, man. I mean, that's a better haircut than I expect from you, and people know what I'm talking about.
I really came back from, in terms of haircuts, like at the beginning of 2020, like right around March. You had to like take your lumps of the bad side of things, and now I'm seeing the other side, which is good. AJ, what's good, my man? How are you, bro?
Glad to be doing this with you guys. The viewers, unfortunately, the listeners rather, don't have the pleasure of viewing the haircut, but they are missing out on some stuff that we would not like to show them had this been a viewership podcast. But nonetheless, we are here to break down this awesome card from top to bottom. Really looking forward to this event. Last week was a friendly reminder that the sport is high variance and to expect the unexpected at times, as there could be some crazy outcomes that we don't see coming, but make the sport so awesome.
You could crumple up about like 10 to 15 minutes of, or what have you, of our breakdown from last week and just throw it out the window, right? Like with not only with the first fight, that we had, it was originally Valiev and Striegel being scrapped, and Alonzo Menafield, and 15 minutes is kind of generous, wouldn't you say? Maybe 20, 25 with all the fights that got thrown out. Hopefully that is not the case this week, and we start at the bottom. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, I want to. I said last week if I was wrong about the Dobson Agapova fight, I have to give my apologies to Dobson. So, my apologies to Shana Dobson, man. She did amazing, and man, I was off last week by saying that it was like a murder case or something. What I said that was not cool. So my apologies to Shana Dobson. Well done.
Cooler.
And, 50K, awesome.
Cooler heads prevailed there, no doubt about it. 50K to Shana Dobson in what was, at least numerically, according to some books. I know that she was kind of all over the place as far as what number you could have gotten her at, but according to some books, she was technically, numerically, the biggest upset in UFC history, which shows. And we keep things rolling and moving along into this weekend, and it starts off with a couple of guys at 170 who have both made good on the UFC contract so far. Sean Brady and Christian Aguilera. Aguilera came out and just dusted Anthony Ivy in his UFC debut a couple of months back. He'll be taking on Sean Brady, who is still undefeated and is kind of trending close to that 4-1 underdog range. He'll be looking to make it 3-0 in the UFC this weekend. AJ, we'll let you start things off here.
I was very impressed with how Aguilera looked in his debut. He, I think in general, has a good skill set. He's a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu with 10 Planet, Eddie Bravo and those guys. He's a good striker, solid footwork, defense, high defensive guard. Brady, I think, is a really stout test for him, though. Like, I think Brady's really good. I'm really high on him as a prospect. Undefeated, trains at Renzo Gracie Philly with the likes of Eddie Alvarez, Paul Felder. He's also a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, a strong wrestler, a good striker as well, technique-wise, fights at a high pace, just like he showed in that Court McGee fight. He has some power as well. Hurt Court McGee, which is not easy to do considering Court McGee's only been stopped via strikes once, to a very heavy-handed and technical striker in Santiago Ponzinibbio. I think Brady's just a more well-rounded fighter. I think he could take this fight to the ground. I have seen Aguilera taken down easily, despite the fact that he is a brown belt in Jiu-Jitsu. I do think that Brady could perhaps take this back, be the more physical grappler, be the better grappler on the ground, just credentials-wise, either hold position or work for a sub. And on the feet, I also favor Brady there as well. I think he's more technically proficient. He throws at the higher work rate. He does a really good job of doubling up on his jab and firing back like a straight right or a left hook that's like pretty sneaky and deceivingly fast. And also, I do think he has enough power to threaten the durability of Aguilera, who's been finished via strikes a few times. There's also one of his LFA fights, I think it was his most recent fight coming into the UFC, where it went to a decision, but he was rocked in that fight. Brady, like I said, has heavy hands. I think he could win this fight on the feet, on the ground. That's why I think he's the big favorite here. I expect Brady to roll and continue his undefeated streak.
I do as well. I think Aguilera is a fun story. I mean, this is one of those guys, we see these types of guys all the time that kind of, it takes a while for them to break into the UFC. And Aguilera did so in a big way earlier this month. Marcel, do you see it trending towards a capitalization of his debut, or do you see Sean Brady remaining undefeated?
Yeah, man, I think Sean Brady is one of those talents that the UFC hasn't really appreciated yet, putting him on the first prelim. But he's very, very good in my opinion. His wrestling is very strong. By the way, I love his back tattoo. He gets a lot of shit for it, but I think it's a real cool piece. Just wanted to put that out. He looked very good in this UFC fight so far, man. He also I saw some fights of him on the CFFC organization. He looked good there as well. He's a strong wrestler in my opinion. If you look at his opponent, Christian Aguilera, very good debut on short notice against Anthony Ivy. Put him away in the first minute. But I think there is a level gap here. I think Brady has a better, it's just better, definitely in the ground game. But I just think overall he is a more complete fighter, and I'm taking Brady here. I gotta be honest, man. I was pretty, pretty upset with Aguilera in his debut, not coming out with a walkout song with Genie in the Bottle. I mean, what the hell? But yeah, taking Brady here. Unanimous decision win for him.
I'm kind of on the same wavelength there for sure. I like Brady in this fight. I think both guys make it competitive, but should be interesting to see. Emily Spitfire Whitmire, one of the best nicknames in MMA as far as money is concerned. She battles Polyana Viana in a match between two girls that can't decide whether they want to fight at flyweight or strawweight. I think this fight is going to be taking place at 115. Marcel, go ahead and have your way with this one.
Yeah, so I remember when Polyana Viana came into the UFC, she had a lot of hype. She won against Maya Kayauanahele. I don't know how to say that, but it's the former girlfriend from Joe Stevenson and the current girlfriend from Joey Beltran, if I'm correct. So after that, she didn't really look good, man, in my opinion. She lost 3 in a row. She got quickly submitted by Veronica Macedo in her last fight. Emily Whitmire, she's proclaimed in the UFC via the Ultimate Fighter. She lost to Robertson in the tough finale, then stacked up 2 wins with an impressive win in the first round by a rear naked choke against Alexandra Albu, losing recently against Amanda Ribas, which is possible because Ribas is really good in my opinion. I think many people will go with Viana here, but man, I can trust Viana, man. I mean, I'm not impressed by her at all. She won against Maya K in her debut, but Maya K isn't really UFC caliber in my opinion. And Whitmire is overall a little bit better in my opinion. So I'm taking Whitmire by the slightest margin via a split decision here.
Should be a close fight. AJ, your thoughts?
Yeah, hopefully Whitmire doesn't have another rough cuts. I remember last time these two women were scheduled to fight. The fight had to get pulled post weigh-ins, unfortunately. And the cut down to 115, is potentially a factor here. I know that Viana, I do think her striking proficiencies could just be much improved. Particularly, she doesn't really move her head off the center line. Her chin is up. But she does throw really hard body kicks. And I know that Whitmire isn't a southpaw. Viana is an orthodox fighter, so it won't be like as open as say it would otherwise to a southpaw striker that Viana would be facing, like in say the JJ Aldridge fight or something like that. But I do think that she could throw them from either leg and potentially do damage. She's also got the longer reach and higher work rates. I just think Whitmire is a more technically proficient striker with better footwork. She just has much better fundamentals and defense. And in terms of the grappling, like you said, Marcel, she was submitted last time out there against Macedo, which is a concern because on paper, Viana is a BJJ world champion. But looking at her Instagram as of July 1st, looking at the post right now, she is a brown belt. So just to put, I guess, a rank on the credentials, she is a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Whitmire, I don't think her defensive grappling is bad, but if you look at the culprit to her losses, she can be subbed, like against Amanda Ribas and Jillian Robertson from guard. That is I guess, a legitimate possibility from either woman here to get a guard sub, particularly like an armbar or something. I think we can see a finish materialize if they're tangling on the ground. Viana does have a good clinch, turn, trip, takedown ability. If she gets in top position on Whitmire, I think she has the potential to submit her. Otherwise, I think she'll have difficulty taking Whitmire down. We've seen Viana content to kind of pull guard multiple times like she did against Cyphers from her guard. Again, she will still be a threat, I think, to submit Whitmire. I will ever so slightly lean with Whitmire here because I see Viana's path to victory as like just a sub. If she doesn't sub Whitmire, then I think Whitmire's going to win minutes by just being the more fundamentally sound fighter. And probably win on the scorecards or perhaps even a submission. So kind of slightly lean with Emily Whitmire.
Very astute analysis there. I like Whitmire here. I think Viana was, kind of the subject of her own hype coming in to her UFC tenure. Fought pretty well at the beginning and has kind of tailed off since. As we move along, who knows who Alex Caceres is going to fight this weekend? It looks like at this point it's going to be Austin Springer, who, ironically enough, replaces Giga Chikadze, who has stormed off to an impressive 3-0 start in the UFC. Giga is now off the card, and I believe his last loss came against his replacement, Austin Springer, now on which came on the Contender Series. Springer also a former tough competitor as well. What kind of difficulties do you see, Mr. Schullo, him giving 2-1 Bruce Leroy?
Potentially a couple. There's some things I like about, Springer. He trains at American Top Team. He's got a wrestling background. He's a purple belt in jiu-jitsu per his Instagram. Like you said, though, he is taking this fight on short notice. Perhaps that hinders his cardio. To my knowledge, he wasn't preparing for a fight ahead of this, so he's kind of just I don't know the type of preparation he's doing. Again, looking at his Instagram, he's been training in the gym. He's just another thing that I noticed with Springer is he's just been fighting infrequently. He's only fought 2 times since June of 2018. You mentioned the Giga fight. I noticed in that fight, and it's actually kind of a similar matchup for Springer, because, Caceres is a gentleman who excels at range. He likes to basically stick and move on the outside. Doesn't have particularly good defense in terms of keeping his hands up. He relies basically on his athleticism, his evasiveness, and I do think he holds those advantages here. I do think that while these two are at range, where Springer has shown to be comfortable standing for long stretches of the round, Caceres will be the more technical striker, the more effective striker by just, again, sticking and moving and doing damage potentially along the way. I think he has potential to hurt Springer, even though Caceres isn't known as like a huge one-shot KO kind of guy. I think he has that potential. But Springer can make it interesting because stylistically, I think that Caceres' takedown defense could be much improved, despite the fact that he does have that stick and move evasive style. Guys can close his distance on him. Guys can drag him down from the clinch position, like in the Martin Bravo fight or Steven Peterson fight. Caceres also tends to give up his back. Albeit, though, he is getting submitted these days, at least in recent years, by high-level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioners and Jason Knights, and, of course, Crow Gracie. So I don't think that a sub from Springer is all that likely. I think his path to victory is to kind of just grind Caceres out. He's got to do, I think, a more urgent job that he showed against Giga of closing the distance because he was kind of just, again, content to stand at range, which, again, will favor Caceres. Ultimately, I'm going to side with Caceres because I think that Springer, for the most part, will bring the type of fight Caceres will excel in. Additionally, we have Caceres here who's had just much more time to prepare and has fought as recently as, say, a few months ago against Chase Hooper. So he's fighting more frequently. That's nice about him because before it was mainly just once a year. He'd fight on some cards overseas, in Asia and whatnot. But it's nice to see him back in the octagon. I think he gets his hand raised in probably a decision scenario.
Marcel?
Yeah, man, I'm actually happy for Austin Springer that he's got another chance in the UFC. He lost on the Ultimate Fighter season 22 to Chris Gritzmacher. Then he actually won against Giga Chikadze, right? But I had the feeling that the UFC really was banking on Giga to win that fight to get him in the UFC. And 4 of the 5 guys that night got a contract and Austin didn't get one. Maybe also because he lost the first round back then. I also think the second round was pretty close. And the third round he took over, if I can remember correctly. If I don't remember correctly, please tell me. But yeah, I think Alex Caceres, man, is a veteran, man. The thing is, he's inconsistent as well. You know, he has losses against guys he shouldn't lose to, and he got wins against guys he should win against, in my opinion. I think I picked him against Chase Hooper to win that fight. Yeah, what can I say? I think it's a tough replacement. I don't think it will be an easy fight at all for Caceres. I think this will be a very 50-50 fight for me, but I'm not gonna take a gamble here, man. I'm gonna be a bitch, and I'm siding with Caceres via decision. But it's a close fight, man. I think it can go either way. But AJ already broke it down perfectly, I think. So it can go either way.
It could go either way. I think this is a close fight. I think this fight potentially could see the scorecards given the technical proficiencies of both. I'm going to lean with the experience here and roll with Caceres. As we move along to 185, another really interesting prelim, could be on a main card of just about any fight night, I would imagine. Zach Cummings and Alessio Di Chirico should bring out, I think this is a fight that potentially could bring out the best in both of these guys. Marcel, what say you?
Yeah, man, it's a fight that, well, like you said, it can bring the best out of both guys. I think Zach Cummings, he's always a very underestimated guy in the UFC, man. And he trains at Glory MMA Fitness with James Cross, I think. He's also sometimes training at Factory X, I think, right? Or am I mistaken? I don't know. You guys looking? Let it in the middle. So he lost his last fight against Omari Akhmedov. Before that, 2 wins. Come from behind victory against Trevin Giles. Alessio Di Chirico hasn't fought in a long time, man. He had problems with the opponents falling out. 2019, his last fight against Mahmoud Muradov, which I think was a pretty close fight, man. And that wasn't in Denmark, or no, it was in Denmark, right? Against Muradov, or I'm tripping right now. Yeah. So I think that was a close fight. The Kevin Holland fight, actually, I thought he won that fight. So the funny thing here is he's on a 2-fight losing skid, but he could have been on a 2-fight, actually on a 4-fight winning streak. So it's a 50-50 fight again for me, man. I'm gotta side with the guy. I have a gut feeling he's gonna win here. I think Di Chirico breaks his losing skid and gets on the win column. I'm taking him via. He's not gonna finish. Cummings is too tough. Going with a decision again, but a unanimous one here. I think Di Chirico gets on track. And he has to, man. I mean, if he loses, he has 3 losses in a row. Plus Marvin Vettori is going to be pissed at Zach Cummings, and he's going to try to call him out like he does with all people who loses to Di Chirico, or win against Di Chirico. So, he has to.
AJ, your thoughts?
Yeah, Marcel brought up a lot of good points. And Marcel, you are right. As of August 4th, I see a picture of Cummings training at a Factory X Muay Thai. I don't know the gentleman who he's training with. It looks like it's hard to tell. The guy's got his head ducked down, but you're right. Factory X Muay Thai. So yeah, that bodes well. And it's a really good camp. Mark Montoya has a lot of young up and coming prospects. Like Gutierrez, Zalal. List goes on, Denver, Colorado. The thing with Cummings, though, is he doesn't exactly fit that prototype of a Zalal or Gutierrez. He's a little bit more flat-footed than I'd like him to be. Like you said, though, he is very talented. I think that Cummings has a lot of tools to really threaten pretty much any fighter in either welterweight or middleweight. Obviously, his power was more compelling at welterweight, considering his more pronounced size. He's got a lot of power. He's a proficient technical counter striker. He can wrestle well. He wrestled up from when he was a young boy up until college, and was credentialed in there as well. And he is a black belt in jiu-jitsu. The thing with Cummings, though, is he just doesn't always use those tools to the full potential. He just waits way too much, I think, in striking exchanges. He's got enough power to hurt most guys. If he could hurt a guy like Akhmedov last fight, he's got enough power to hurt some of the most durable guys. It's just he doesn't throw that many punches. He's just all relying on the counter. And in terms of the wrestling, the guy just unfortunately doesn't offensively wrestle, not in recent years. And then the black belt, it's mainly just he's opportunistic with it. Again, it's nice. If the opposition takes him down, he has a black belt, he could threaten, he fishes for Kimuras, etc. He couldn't get Akhmedov because Akhmedov was just too strong in top position, but like, the Trevin Giles fight, for instance, he rocked Giles, and then once the fight hit the ground, he got a really tight guillotine on Giles and submitted him. So my thing with Cummings is like, he's got a lot of tools, but again, he just doesn't always utilize them to their fullest potential, and as a result, he struggles to win rounds unless if he does damage or gets a sub or something. Which in turn would finish the fight, not necessarily win the round. I am more, though, on Deshirico in this matchup because I think he's a bit faster. He's younger. I think he's got the better footwork. And like Marcel said, he has been fighting guys that are also just, really young and athletic, like Murdov, Holland. And those fights, like you said, those were competitive. Those were like 29-28 decisions. Like, honestly, close though. Honestly, kind of surprised watching back on tape and even live that they weren't split because they were ultimately very close. Like I said, Cummings does have some power, but also Deshirico's got some sneaky pop in his hands too. So I'm not expecting Deshirico to knock out Cummings. Cummings has got a granite chin, never been knocked out in 30 pro fights, and has fought guys like Santiago Ponzinibbio. So I think that Deshirico probably gets it done in a decision scenario by just landing a bit more volume on the feet, having a bit better footwork, and having the superior speed of the two. So ultimately, I'm going to side with Deshirico.
It's one of my favorite fights on the card. I think this should be a good one at 185. As we get on to our second fight at 115, Mallory Martin and Hannah Cyphers.
What is your pick?
But my pick?
Yeah.
Good one. I like Cummings. I'm going with Cummings there. So I think that's our first one where we are on opposite sides, right? Did you have Whitmire or Viana?
Whitmire.
All right. Yeah, so we are on opposite sides for the first time with that one. Martin and Cyphers at 115. Hannah Cyphers has been very active, whether it be at 115 or 125, just taking a bunch of fights during this pandemic. Most have not gone her way. AJ, we'll let you kick this one off. Do you see a potential change in fortunes for one Hannah Cyphers here as she takes on the relative UFC newcomer Mallory Martin?
Maybe, but I mean, we've seen so many times the sport is unpredictable, but process-oriented wise, I think this is actually a good matchup for Martin again. She's a very talented young lady. She trains at AKA. From what I can tell on Instagram, she does a lot of, one-on-one work with like Cynthia Calvillo, which I think is nice. She's a BJJ brown belt. She's got a good wrestling, I'd say, for MMA standards. She's not the most persistent with the takedown, but she's persistent enough to where I think she could get Cyphers down. I think Martin is the more physical fighter here. And so in a fight that, probably hits the ground, as initiated by Martin, she should be able to, pass the guard of Cyphers. We've seen Cyphers' guard passed by, Angela Hill. She's been finished on the ground, unfortunately, in all of her UFC losses, whether it's by sub or TKO. Martin, she has been a decision a lot, but one thing I like about her is she's just got a very good, game plan, and that she knows what she wants to do. She looks to take the fight to the ground. She looks to pass the guard and get mount and either finish the fight with just nasty ground and pound, really hard elbows, or like an arm triangle choke type of finish. And we've seen against Cyphers, just off of her back, she can be susceptible there, unfortunately. So I think Martin certainly has the wrestling and grappling advantage. And on the feet, I think Martin can win there as well. She has done work at Tiger Muay Thai in the past. From what I can tell, she doesn't work as closely with them in recent years. So she just, I guess, hasn't been traveling out to Thailand. But like I said, training at AKA, I think that bodes well. I actually think she's the more fluid striker of the two, is Martin. She's got a solid work rate. I think she's a bit more defensively sound than Cyphers. So in a fight that should be competitive on the feet, I wouldn't be surprised to see Martin get the better of those exchanges. And then you have the added upside of she should be able to take the fight to the ground, pass the guard, and potentially even get a finish there. So while it is a fight where I guess it can be more forgiving for Cyphers on paper in one perspective, in that she's not facing a woman who has like a ton of UFC experience. Martin still has only fought once, and she fought a very dangerous woman in Verna Jandiroba. I think that, the secret, so to speak, isn't quite out yet on how good Martin is, and as a result, that's why I think, Cyphers, I guess it would seem, she's got a legit shot to win, and she does, but ultimately I'm going to side with Martin to win just due to the better wrestling, grappling, and potentially winning the fight on the feet as well.
Marcel?
Yeah, man. Eminem, Mallory Martin against Hannah Cyphers. Yeah, I think Martin had a very tough debut, man, against Verna Jandiroba. Jandiroba is arguably top 10, I think, in the strawweight division. Just my opinion. Hannah Cyphers, she took some short notice fights, and this one is actually also a short notice fight, man. I mean, because I heard an interview with James Lynch, Mallory Martin was supposed to fight Hannah Goldie, and that didn't happen because Goldie was injured, so now getting Hannah Cyphers. She always takes those short notice fights, so, but yeah, I agree with what AJ said, man. I think Mallory Martin is probably better than Hannah Cyphers. I think actually both on the ground and stand up, man. I think she takes her probably to the ground and she gonna ground and pound, and she'll get a finish maybe in the second round. I'm going with Mallory Martin. And I also think she trains now with sometimes at AKA, but she also trains at Elevation right now. So look, I'm looking forward to this fight, man. I think might be done for Cyphers with a fourth loss, but hey, you never know, man. I mean, Vanessa Mello has another fight coming up, so we'll see what happens.
I like Martin here as well as we move along. It feels like it wasn't too long ago we saw Impa Kasanganay, right, on the ever so venerable Dana White's Contender Series. He takes on a fellow Contender Series alum in Maki Pitolo, who's trending downward and could very much so use a win here. Marcel, your thoughts at this featured prelim at middleweight?
Yeah, coconut bumps, man. I like the dude. He's a fun fighter, but I don't know, man. He has some holes in his game, and I think Darren Stewart perfectly showed that last time out. Impa Kasanganay, I'm pretty high on Impa Kasanganay, man. I think he's a very solid fighter. He should have got the contract last year in the Contender Series, in my opinion. This year wasn't as impressive as last year, actually, but I honestly think that Dana said, you want to fight on the 22nd? Because this fight was originally scheduled for 22nd. He's like, yeah, sure, okay, you're in. If he said no, he probably would have been in the UFC. So that's pretty crazy to me. He looked good so far, what I saw, man. He was supposed to fight for the LFA title. That didn't went through because because of the COVID, that event got cancelled. I think Impa only really has to look out for a hard shot from Pitolo in the stand-up, because I think on the ground he's better. I expect him also to take the fight to the ground and trying to grind out Maki Pitolo, maybe finish him via ground and pound, but I'm taking Impa via unanimous decision here.
Should be a good one here. AJ, your thoughts?
Yeah, quick turnaround for both of them. Like Marcel said, Maki unfortunately lost to Stewart there. Impa, I just like Marcel said, I like Impa. He's, you could say he's like Green in the sense where he's just inexperienced, only 7-0. He has looked really solid, though, I will say. I think he's a good technical, measured striker. He has a good work rate on the feet. We saw in his last Contender Series appearance that he's got good cardio for 3 rounds. Like you guys alluded to, he did not get the finish. However, I really admire his willingness to go for the finish. I just think that Adams was just a really tough and durable opponent that was, obviously not easy to finish. And so again, despite not getting the finish, I admire his tenacity, his willingness to be aware. That was another thing I noticed in that last Contender Series. He lost the first round on, I believe, all 3 judges' scorecards to Adams, but he changed up the game plan, made an adjustment, worked in his wrestling, which I think is overall solid. I think that could be a tool here against Maki, who we've seen taken down in the past multiple times, like by Charles Bird, Callan Potter, some prior UFC fights. I think Imba's the better wrestler. I think he's the better grappler as well. I know that he is improving the grappling aspect of his game, positionally. I think he could get a bit better. I see he lost position on that first Contender Series appearance against Hill. He did lose position one time in this Contender Series appearance, but I noticed the difference. I noticed the improvement from taking about a year off. He trains with guys like Brian Barberena, Scott Holtzman, guys that have that prototype of push a solid pace, be in your face for all 3 rounds, have good cardio. I think Imba's defensively sound. I think that I think they're both motivated, but I think he sees this as a huge opportunity where he perhaps has more confidence of the two. He's a very humble man, from what I could tell. So again, he's not going to take Maki lightly or anything like that. Maki should be game, but I just think that Imba here has the better round-winning tools. I think he should control the wrestling as well. Potentially he could get a finish, although I do think I stand by my point about what I said about Maki. I think we talked about in this going into the Stewart fight. I think that he performs better and his durability is better at 185 than say 170 because of those drastic weight cuts. He was like 215 walking around, which is crazy, or something like that. But that said, I still do think Imba is a better fighter. He should get his hand raised, whether it's by decision or TKO. I like Imba.
I like Impa as well. Seems to be trending upward, and I think the defensive tactics, as you mentioned, will be something important to look after here. I like Impa as well, to get it done. We said off the air as we divulge into the main card here. We said off the air that this fight, could be as high as co-main. A Robbie Lawler appearance might defunct that. Could be as high as third fight on the card. However, a lot of people have been waiting for this rematch. Let me just ask you this, Marcel, because you're kicking this one off. Have you ever seen before a guy try to pretend like he's hurt? Because I think in the moment when you're watching Ankalaev Kutalaba 1, right? In the moment, you're thinking, oh my gosh, he's getting hit with all these bombs. But then you go back and watch it, and he's doing this masquerade on the feet where he's pretending like he's hurt, but he's still blocking high kicks, right? He's still there. Have you ever seen anything like that before?
Not as far as I can remember, man, but yeah, what can you say about that? I mean, he played himself, man. I don't feel for him at all, to be honest. So he is lucky he gets a rematch, in my opinion. But not lucky, maybe not lucky, if I can predict the outcome. But I mean, it's a fun matchup, definitely. Kutelaba is gonna go crazy in the first 5 minutes again, if it goes that long. And after 5 minutes, Ankalaev will easily win this fight because Kutelaba only have gas for 5 minutes. So if it goes that long, because Ankalaev is very good on the feet as well, got that, I can say, fluke loss against Paul Craig because he was 30-24 on scorecards and he got submitted with a great submission, by the way, by Paul Craig. Great come from behind one. But yeah, that's crazy actually. Kutelaba, we saw Kutelaba many times that he starts so good and then he fades totally in the second and third round, if he even gets to the third round. So if he can catch Ankalaev, he can definitely win, but it's not going to happen. I think if Ankalaev puts him away in the second round.
I am on the same exact frequency and wavelength there. Second round stoppage for Ankalaev for me. I wonder what the prop bet is going to be, AJ, on whether or not Kutalaba walks straight across the cage and gets right in his face before weigh-ins. -500 for a yes, right?
If it's out there, yeah, it would probably be something close to that. He always seems to do it. That's why I've always called for him versus Paul Craig, because it's are they just going to meet in the middle and do the same thing to each other? That's why I've been calling for that fight for the past few weeks, even though who knows. But anyway, yeah, Magomed, I think he's really talented, man. I do. He's got a good game. He knows what he wants to do. He's a technical fighter who wants to basically stand at range and be the more methodical fighter. In striking exchanges, he can wrestle. He's accomplished in combat sambo, though it seems as though his game is to strike, preferably. He's got a double A takedown capability. He's got good top control when he's on the ground. He was able to control Clifton Abreu, who's a very strong submission grappler. Dolce Lungiambula, who he had a big size advantage over, but Dolce's still a strong guy. There's a lot to like about Magomed. I'm of the I'm of the, I guess, perspective that I think Kudalaba is his toughest test in the UFC thus far, and I think it's actually by a pretty decent margin. And it's not to say that Ankalaev can't pass it. I just think that there's maybe not enough data to suggest that he should be massively favored here over, say, a guy like Kudalaba, because I don't know how he's going to react to Kudalaba just getting in his face. I know that he's good about having solid footwork and fighting more methodically at range, but all the fights, the opponents he's had in the UFC, they've largely just played the same game. They've obliged to the game that, or the tone of the fight that Magomed has set. Whereas I don't think that Kudalaba is going to oblige. And maybe he gets countered on the way in. That's always possible. Kudalaba, I'd still say he is very durable. He has been TKO'd once. We talked about the last fight with a little bit of controversy and, again, whatever. But I'd still say generally he's durable. That said, they're still light heavyweights. They hit hard. But on the Ankalaev side, I'm kind of nervous seeing him on tape get what do my notes say? He was hurt briefly by a gray shot to the head by Dalcha, and then he was also wobbled by a check left hook to a brave. He still hasn't been knocked out on paper, but that still is a bit concerning, especially considering the type of guy Kudalaba is. He's just going to run at him and throw big shots, and maybe he gets countered. But I don't know how Ankalaev is going to respond to an opponent who doesn't oblige to his type of fight. And when he doesn't have that wrestling to at least bail him out on paper, at least while these two are fresh, because Kudalaba, according to Wikipedia, is accomplished in combat sambo. He's medaled there. Again, I know that's mainly just upper body wrestling and not, lower body. But even when Glover was trying to take Iwan down, he was struggling there until Iwan got a little overzealous in the second round and got tired. So, like you guys said, I do think it's reasonable that Kudalaba tries to finish this fight, but then he doesn't, and then he gets tired doing so. And then we see Ankalaev take over, whether he gets a finish or whether he wins on the scorecards. This is a fight, though, where I would not be all that, I guess, shocked to see it go to decision, because, if I look at the fights where Kudalaba has been finished in, it's been by submission grapplers. Ankalaev doesn't have a single submission win on his resume. It's not to say he's a bad submission grappler that he can't get, a ground and pound stoppage, but this is one of these fights where I wouldn't be surprised to see it play out a bit. I understand Ankalaev being the favorite. I think that he, on paper has the ability to fight for 3 rounds. He has that good game plan of fighting methodically at range. But I still stand by the perspective of I think that Kudalaba is his toughest test, and I would not be shocked to see Kudalaba pull off the upset.
Do you guys remember when he came into his face right before the fight, that he just pushed him away, man, in the cage?
Dude, he walked right up to him and they bare chested, and he had to toss him away. Dude, what are you doing? The legendary Tommy Toehold put out a really funny tweet on the night of 252, where he said, if cocaine were a person, it would be Merab Dvalishvili. I think you could plug in Ion Kudalaba in there as well. If it were an individual, it's Ion Kudalaba walking straight at you right before you guys are supposed to fight. I think that's a good comparison as well. Moving on to 145. My pick for that last fight, though, is Ankalaev. I think I mentioned that in between. As we move along to 145, I think to the dismay of many, we thought we were going to see Ryan Hall here. Gosh, that sucks that we're not. However, Bill Algeo steps in. Very talented fighter, 13-4, I believe. In the past, made an appearance, or at least was slated to, on the Contender Series. Yeah, he was the guy that lost to Brendan Laugnan in the first episode last year. Picked up a win in Cage Fury Fighting Championships since. He will take a step up to the big show and take on a guy with a lot of top-tier experience in Ricardo Lamas. AJ, your thoughts on what could be potentially dangerous for a guy like Lamas taking this fight?
Yeah, it could be dangerous. Kind of like what we'll get into with Lawler, I guess, later, at least from my perspective. It just kind of depends on how far away Lamas is from his prime. In terms of how, if he wins this fight, and then in terms of how much. I just think he's the much better fighter here, to be honest. I think he's a much more technical striker. I think he's more defensively sound. I think he throws with more power. I think he's a better grappler. I just saw on his Instagram. Second degree BJJ black belt now. We know he's got the NCAA Division III wrestling background. I think he's the better wrestler here of the two. Bill, though, he does have a solid skill set. He's a black belt himself. He's tough. He'll be in your face. He's the longer man here. He utilizes straight punches, so at range he can have some success. Landing some volume. Lamas he's a guy that his, kind of like what I said earlier, like his round winning tools aren't super reliable because he doesn't always fight at the highest pace unless he kind of just takes you down and rides you out in top position or something like that, or hurts you in the round. It's tough for him to win round, put a stamp on a round. That's why, part of the reason why he lost a split to Backtick there in Chicago a couple years ago. But not to get away from my point, I think Lamas can land takedowns. Bill, I've seen him taken down easily, even on his Contender Series fight. He gives up his back after getting up from getting taken down. It just kind of, like I said, I don't know where Lamas is at. He's lost 3 out of his past 4 fights, and he's been stopped via strikes a few times. I don't think Bill is nearly the threat, a big of a threat on the feet as Emmett nor Cater is, nor is technical. But again, it still is damage taken by Lamas, and at the end of the day, I wouldn't be all that surprised to see Bill hurt him, even though I don't think he's, in general, a huge power threat. I'm going to side with the fighter that I just think has a bit more ways to win and is more experienced and has more going for him in terms of he's more prepared for this fight. He was notified of it. Like you said, it was supposed to be Ryan Hall. Now it's Bill. Bill did fight recently, though, is in this month. So he should be kind of fresh off a nice win. But that said, I'm still going to slightly lean with, or not slightly, but I'm going to lean rather with a bit more conviction on the side of Ricardo Lamas here.
Marcel, your thoughts?
Yeah, man, El Senor Perfecto, Bill Algeo. He won recently against Tim Dooling, which was a rematch. He beat him before already. He was actually supposed to fight Pat Sabatini for the vacant featherweight title at CFFC since James Gonzalez vacated it. Taking the short notice fight against Ricardo Lamas. I think Lamas gets underrated right now, man, because he has lost 3 of his last 4. But you gotta look against who he lost, He didn't lose against some tomato cans or something. He lost against Josh Emmett. He lost against Calvin Cater, which is a very bright guy for the future, the near future. And he lost to Marcel Dorff, I think, via split decision. His only win was against Darren Elkins, which is still a very good win. Darren Elkins is durable as fuck. So, Bill Algeo is a short notice fight. I think this is a little bit too much of a step up for him at this moment, man. I like Algeo in the UFC. I have no problem with it. I saw many people being upset because Brandon Loughnane isn't in the UFC and Algeo is right now. I can't agree with that. I think both guys should have got a shot in the UFC, but Dana was a bitch that night for some reason. But I'm taking Lamas here. I think Lamas is a better fighter, has more ways to win here, and I think he will be dominant definitely on the ground. So I'm taking Lamas via unanimous decision, winning the fight via his ground game, man.
I have Lamas winning this fight as well. I think experience will play a part here, and rightfully so. As we move along to 125. Newly ranked Ji Yeon Kim taking on a newly chastised flyweight in Alexa Grasso. Grasso has kind of been a mainstay at 115 for a while. I see this fight playing out rather technically. Marcel, your thoughts on this fight between 2 girls in the top 15 in their respective weight classes?
Yeah, I think it's a smart move from Alexa Grasso going to flyweight, man. I think this is a good fight to start with. Ji Yeon Kim. Kim won her last fight against Nadia Kassem, but Kassem didn't look so good so far in the UFC. She did that, what was that? She came out of the bed with that fake glove touch and she tried to hit her and then she got knocked down. So that was pretty funny to see. Before that, losing to Antonina Shevchenko. 2 split decision wins before that. I don't think she defeated Justine Kish. I think Kish actually should have won that fight, in my opinion, against Ji Yeon Kim. If you look at Grasso has some very competitive fights, man. I think against Carla Esparza, she lost the fight. But it was a close fight, could have gone her way as well. I scored it personally for Esparza to break this one down. I think Grasso is a more talented fighter than Kim. I think Kim is not bad at all, but I don't see Kim making a run in the top 10. And I think Russell can definitely make a run in the top 10. She's still young. She is very talented. Definitely, I think Russell will be just better, man. I think Kim is it's not bad on the feet, but I don't really trust her ground game, and Grosso can hang on both. So definitely not going to be a finish, because it's most women fights we're going to decisions, but I think Grosso gets the unanimous decision win here.
AJ?
So this is a stylistic matchup that Grasso isn't all that familiar with in terms of arm reach, because Kim will have 6 inches of reach. Grasso has never faced a woman in the UFC with a longer reach than her. The only woman who had a comparable reach in terms of her for UFCstats.com is Suarez. They both have 66-inch reach, whereas Kim has 72. With that said, like Marcel said, Kim did fight Kish. It was a little bit of controversial split decision. Kish has a 64-inch reach, so Kim has more arm reach advantage over her than, say, she did against Grasso. And Kish was still able to land 96 significant strikes, more significant strikes than Kim did with 68 in the course of 3 rounds. Part of the reason why there's a little bit of controversy. But nonetheless, in a fight that should stay standing, it's hard not to favor Grasso more often than not. Her boxing is just so crisp and technical. In the fight that stayed standing, there's only been one fight in her UFC career that stayed standing exclusively, and that was against Carolina, and she landed 148 significant strikes. So her volume is there, her technique is there, the footwork is there, the head movement I think is solid. She's just very good. She trains with Irene Aldana, who has that same prototype of fighter, very good boxing and footwork and volume and all that good stuff. I'm going to lean with Grasso because in addition to the crispness and technique of her striking, I also think she'll have a pretty pronounced speed advantage here and volume advantage. So she should be able to win rounds in a fight that should stay standing. Kim, she's got more physicality. She is a BJJ brown belt, but I don't think that this fight is going to hit the ground, for A once, and B, even if it does, for an extended period of time to where Kim can do something significant. So, just going to ultimately side with Grasso here. I just think she has many advantages in a fight that should stay standing.
I like Grasso here as well. I think this fight will play out technically for the most part, and I do think Grasso gets her hand raised at the end of the day. So Lawler and Magny in the main event, or in the co-main event. Jeff Neal was originally slated to be in Robbie Lawler's spot. He had a pretty scary situation happen to him, as prayers and thoughts still go up to Jeff Neal in that Fortis MMA corner. Robbie Lawler steps in as a short notice replacement rather, and will take on Neil Magny in the evening's co-main event. AJ, your thoughts on this one at 170?
So I guess unfamiliar matchup for Lawler, at least recently, he hasn't faced a man, kind of like what I said about Grasso, he hasn't faced a man in the UFC. I went way back in his record, that has the reach advantage that Magny has over him, 6 inches per UFC, or ESPN.com. So I guess while these two are at range, Magny will have success landing some straight punches. Magny's got really good cardio and solid volume on the feet. This is a different matchup for Lawler than, say, the Covington fight, because I don't think Magny's wrestling is as good technically or as persistent as Colby Covington. And I wouldn't be all that shocked to see Lawler hurt Magny, because even though I do think that Lawler's power has regressed than, say, when he was in the prime of his career, he isn't out there, knocking guys out as frequently, definitely. But, I've seen Magny hurt on tape more than I thought I was going to. He was hurt by Martin. He was hurt by Lee. Obviously, we saw he was knocked out by Santiago. The Lorenz Larkin fight was, a while ago, but he still got hurt by a guy that will pressure and is threatening. And Lawler kind of carries that same prototype that, Larkin. Obviously, Lawler doesn't throw kicks like Larkin or anything like that, but he has that, prototype of pressure fighter that's good, that's a good technical striker, that has some power, even if it's regressed a little bit. So Lawler, I actually think, is a better technical striker and has better defense with the head movement. Like I said, Magny's got the reach, and while these two are at range, I think Magny could have success jabbing Lawler. I don't think Magny has the power to threaten Lawler like Tyron Woodley did. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Lawler pull off the upset because technical proficiency wise, I think he's a better striker. I think he's got more power and better defense in a fight that should remain standing. Lawler is taking this fight on short notice, like you said, for Jeff Neal, which I guess is a concern. I'm not all too worried about the cardio of Lawler, though. I know he's in the gym training with, Gilbert Burns and Vicente Luque now. He's been 5 rounds multiple times, just as recently as his last fight. And so, in a fight that should stay standing, I think that Lawler could potentially swing rounds by just landing the more damaging shots, and being competitive enough with Magny on a volume basis, or potentially win by knockout down the stretch. So, I think that Lawler could play an upset here. I understand that, what am I trying to say? He can pull off the upset, but Magny certainly, could just, outwork him for 3 rounds, on the feet. Maybe he gets a takedown, but I don't think that he's going to take Lawler down consistently. So that's how they see the fight going. It should be more competitive, I think, than say the odds indicate.
Marcel?
Yeah, my question is, when is the last time we saw Robbie Lawler being Robbie Lawler? That's probably in the Ben Askren fight when he pretty much almost knocked his brains out of his head, but Askren came back in that fight. But that's pretty much the last time, man, and I'm not impressed lately by Lawler. We gotta say, man, Lawler is getting older as well. I mean, nothing bad about that. He still has a great career, man. Guy is great. He will definitely be a UFC Hall of Famer, I think. So, on the other hand, we have Neil Magny, who is looking good in his recent fights, man. I think he looked amazing against Li Jingliang. And in his last fight against Anthony Rocco Martin, that was a close fight in my opinion, man. Could have also gone to Rocco Martin. Most people had a 2-1 to Magny. I had it as a 50-50 one, but Rocco Martin is good as well in my opinion. I agree with AJ that Lawler can definitely win this fight, but I think Magny will keep him at range, will keep picking his shots. I will try to do that for 3 rounds probably, and taking home a unanimous decision. That's how I see it. But it's definitely, it can go either way, man. It's not like it's a clear-cut win for Magny.
No, I agree. Riding along the same coattails there. I like Magny for sure. I think that it could be very close, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if Lawler does get his hand raised. As we move along to the main event, one of those 3-rounders. Oh yeah, my favorite. Anthony Smith and Alexander Rakic. Obviously, this weekend's main event was supposed to be, or slated to be, at some point. Who really knows? Yair Rodriguez and Zabit Magomed Sharipov. That fight can't seem to touch the ground.
Don't remind us.
I thought the Ryan Hall thing was going to be off-putting enough, but no. That's even worse when you think about it. However, not a bad main event whatsoever. Really not a bad card in the light of those cancellations from top to bottom. Smith and Rakic will get it going in the main event. Rakic is a huge favorite at the moment. Marcel, go ahead and kick this one off. Pretty important fight at 205, especially in the light and waking of there being a vacant seat atop the throne.
Yeah, so let's start with Alexander Rakic, the Austrian with Serbian blood. Good fighter, man. I mean, I saw his debut live in Rotterdam when he fought Francima Barroso. I always say like he kind of looks like the smaller version of Rico Verhoeven, but I don't say he fights like him, but he kind of reminds me of him. Then he had an amazing fight against Justin Ledet, like he beat him down for like 3 rounds. The Devin Clark one, he won that fight, but he had some adversity in that fight, man. I think Devin Clark tagged him pretty bad in the beginning, and then he came back. Fight after that, Jimmy Manuwa, the head kick, and then the split decision loss against Volkan Ozdemir in a fight that I think could have been for him as well, was a 50-50 fight. But Rakic is a bright prospect, man. I don't really agree with the how do you say that, with the resembling with Johnny Walker. I think it's totally different here. I think Rakic is a much more complete fighter than Johnny Walker. Johnny Walker is just very spectacular, you know. And yeah, he lost to Nikita Krylov, but I don't have to remember Davidson about that. Then we're going to Anthony Smith. He can't laugh about it, but we can if we remind his haircut because of it. Anthony Smith. Yeah, Anthony Smith. He lost to John Jones in the title fight. After that, a very good fight, or not a very. He came back from behind, I think, against Alexander Gustafsson, if I remember correctly. But a solid win for him. After that, that fight against Glover, man, my God, I mean, that should have been stopped much earlier. Should have been stopped by the corner, in my opinion. I know Anthony Smith has in his contract or something like, you can't stop my fight, but come on, dude was losing fucking teeth. I think this fight is way too early for him to come back. That's just my opinion. I'm not a specialist or an expert or anything, but I think this is way too quick. With the knockout power Rakic has to land flush, and I think it's done, because this is way too quick for Smith. Smith is a very talented guy. Definitely paid his dues so far in the light heavyweight division, but maybe because of if he can neutralize Rakic for 3 rounds, he can win this fight. But I think Rakic will catch him somewhere and finish him via TKO in the second round or something. I'm taking Rakic. If this fight wasn't so quick after the Glover-Teixeira fight, I might have gone with Smith because of experience, the way of fighting. But I'm taking Rakic here. I think it's too quick for Smith.
I agree. I do think 3 rounds does potentially play a what's the word I'm looking for? As far as mitigating factors are concerned, I think that it plays in Anthony Smith's favor that this fight is 3 rounds. You could potentially see, at least, from the outsider's perspective, you could potentially see a similar approach for Anthony Smith, even though it didn't work out last time, where he kind of comes in and starts to unload right away. I know his output in the first 2 rounds against Teixeira were, astronomically higher than any other rounds in his career. However, I do think that it is a little bit too soon as well. I think that Rakic has more ways to win potentially, as far as finishing him with strikes. I think if the fight is to be won by submission, give me Anthony Smith. But I will go with Rakic here. AJ, your thoughts and breakdown of this main event.
So, even if we didn't see Smith take all that damage by Glover, I actually still would be on Rakic here with conviction. I just think this guy is improving so much on a fight-to-fight basis. Like, if looking at his fight against even Justin Ledet, where he still looked very good in, to his fight against Volkan Oezdemir, I think he's looked so much better. And it sounds kind of bold because he lost the split to Volkan, but then beats Justin Ledet pretty much 30-24, one of the most dominant belt-to-belt victories I've ever seen in terms of going 3 rounds. But his boxing has tremendously improved, I think. He's incorporated more feints in his game. Just the overall technique and sharpness. His head movement has improved. He's got proficient countering ability. This is a efficient, hardworking man who's hungry, I think. I think that a split decision loss, even though it could have been either way, could really fire him up. He's a young guy. I think that even though he's shown to be really good, we could see the improvements out of him on a fight-to-fight basis, based off his experience and his youth in the hard work that he's putting in. In addition, I do think that actually if there's takedowns to be landed, they'd actually probably come from Rakic. I think he's a more physical man. His wrestling proficiencies, they can be improved. I mean, he's a guy that's got a kickboxing base. He's not known as a wrestler, but he has added that wrinkle to his game. And I've seen Smith taken down so many times on tape, not just by, John Jones, by Volkan Oezdemir. He's been taken down by other fighters as well, like, Hector Lombard, Anthony Smith. I think Rakic has that in the cards, but even if he doesn't want to take Smith down, I think he'll win on the feet by just being the more proficient striker. At range, I think Rakic will have that edge. He's the longer man in terms of reach. Like you said, Smith came out hot against Glover, and that was really like the only time in recent memory where I remember Smith coming out hot like that. And it made me have this realization, has Smith had this under the radar cardio issue for the vast majority of his career. And I thought about it. And, he's always been known as this guy. His nickname is Lionheart, obviously. He finds it within himself to come from behind and get these victories, even if he's losing early on, like against Alexander Gustafsson and Volkan Ozdemir. And good on him. But in those fights, the opposition is either tiring, like in the case of Lombard and Ozdemir, or making a mistake on the ground, like in the case of Gustafsson. And good on Anthony Smith for capitalizing on it. But when we saw him push a solid pace against Glover, he was very tired there after 4 minutes. Glover was actually getting off on him, and he looked to actually have Smith hurt. Glover threw a left hook that caused Smith to back up, and his back hit the fence. So that's a concern, even in a 3-round fight. Even though Rakic, this is his first main event spot, he doesn't seem like a type of guy where the moment will get to him. I think he'll more so embrace it. That last fight against Ozdemir was over in Korea, and it was a co-main event, so still a big opportunity where, again, despite losing, he made a good account of himself, didn't look off or anything. I actually thought he looked better than ever there than, say, his previous fight. So I'm sold on Rakic here, and then you got again, like you guys said, the added angle of Smith just taking so much damage. I mean, rounds 3 and 4 were so tough to watch against Teixeira. We've seen Rakic, just even in the Ledet fight, when he gets in top position, he will be that guy to hold you there. He's very physical as Rakic for this weight class. I don't know how the guy makes the weight. The guy's got very little body fat on him, and he could potentially do damage from top position. I do think that he's a competent grappler, even though he's not, Damian Maia out there or anything like that. He does, know fundamentally like positional control. He knows some like basic submission, things like that. So he should be fine. He shouldn't be, subbed from Smith's guard or anything like that. So I think that Rakic just has a lot more ways to win, and I just think he has more upside as a fighter. So Rakic is going to be my pick.
Fun times. A clean sweep for Mr. Fighting Pride of Austria, Alexander Rakic, in the main event. From your 3 favorite breakdown, Eves, as we move on to our picks of the nights, and that starts off with our performance of the night picks. I'll go ahead and start. I'll go with Ankalaev, and give me Ankalaev and Lamas. Marcel.
I also want to say somebody just tweeted me that Kevin Kroom was taken from the event due to a positive COVID-19 test.
So that's why he's out.
Yeah, he tweeted that, and that's also what Kevin Kroom posted first, but he took that down, and after that he reposted something else. So, I don't know. I'm going with, that's a tough one actually, because I have many decisions here. I'm taking Ankalaev as well, and going with Rakic.
AJ?
I'll go with Mallory Martin and Rakic.
My backups are Mallory Martin and Emily Whitmire.
Then my backups are Alexa Grasso and Ricardo Lamas.
AJ?
My backups are Impa Kasanganay and Polyana Viana.
I'm going to go a little bit off the grid here for my fight of the night. My fight of the night is Caceres versus Springer. Marcel?
Ankalaev against Kuchelaba.
AJ?
I'm going to go a little contrarian. I'm going to go Waller versus Magny.
Very nice. Let me pull up these odds here to see if I had an underdog. Gonna be tough to find one. Kasangane is a slight favorite. It looks like it looks like I picked all favorites. DeCurico and Cummings are just about close to a pick'em, so why not? I'll go with Cummings.
Yeah, I'm looking right now.
Yeah, Cummings looks to be the underdog, or an underdog at least on most sites.
Yeah, I'm picking the Chirico then.
AJ?
Is this the underdog? I'm
Oh yeah, that's right. Lock of the night. For me, I'm gonna go with first fight out of the chute, Sean Brady. Marcel.
Yeah, 100%.
AJ?
Yeah. I'm going to pass, but after last week, everybody's got their own preference on the word lock, but why I personally don't say the word lock is because of instances like last week.
Yeah, dude, that's a good point. That's a really good point. I mean, everyone's lock would have been Agapova last week, and we saw how that played out. Should be a fun card. I think this card from top to bottom is one of the more fun ones we've had over the past couple of weeks. You guys have any parting thoughts on that?
No.
Go ahead, Marcel.
I agree. And by the way, I see they adjusted the lineup again. So.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
That's our favorite.
So the first fight now was Mallory Martin against Hannah Cyphers.
Great. We just did this all out of whack, but yeah. I mean, it is what it is, right? AJ, you have any parting thoughts, my man?
No, just to add on Marcel's point, this sport never ceases to amuse us. That's why we love it so much. But just like to say thank you to all the listeners. Thanks for listening to us on a weekly basis. Hope you found what we gave you insightful.
And we'll be back again next week. I believe I will be coming to you guys from a remote location. I will be out of town. However, I'll be bringing all of my podcast equipment with me. So I will be in Ohio, back in my old stomping grounds, next week for our recording of preview for, I believe, next week's Overeem and Sakai. Yeah, Overeem and Sakai will be next week. That should be a fun one for sure. And look no further than the three of us to be breaking it down for you guys next week. Thank you so much for listening. And make sure you check out all the other programs on the Loudmouth Podcast Network. We will see you guys next week.